And I think it disqualifies him as a candidate for prime minister if he doesn't want to know.
The leader of the Conservative Party to not get those classified briefings.
This is where it's not going to work out that well for Mr. Trudeau or Mr. Singh.
Justin Trudeau has called out Pierre Poilievre on why he won't get security clearance. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David, and today's top story is, well, we're going to talk about why this is. Pierre Poilievre doesn't want that security clearance, and there's a good reason for it. But Justin Trudeau is smearing him and slandering him and trying to make him look terrible as a bad leader. And it's not just Justin Trudeau using the public inquiry, the foreign interference inquiry to do this, which really should be illegal since he's essentially hiding behind a shield of national security. No one can go look this up. Not even Poilievre, really. But also Jagmeet. Jagmeet's got Trudeau's back. It's very evident here. Those guys are still in a partnership. There's a nice, juicy bromance still going on there between those two guys, despite him ripping up the agreement, all that dramatic stuff he did a month or so ago. What we're going to do is balance between a press conference that Jagmeet held, where he's asked a lot of questions on this, and then some interviews and some clips on X. So let's jump into it. So we got the man of the hour here. Jagmeet is holding a press conference on gun smuggling. But nobody cares about that. All the reporters ask is about the foreign interference, and just listen to how much he backs up Trudeau and attacks Pierre Poilievre.
Just to follow up on the foreign interference report question. Do you have security clearance as well? Do you know those names?
I am aware of information that was shared in the reports, and I've said that given the report that I read, given the information that I was able to read, I have called for a release of the names in a manner that respects national security and respects our workers, the folks that are involved in national security. The concern being that if it's not released in an appropriate manner, it could jeopardize either the methodology, how we've obtained that information, or the people that obtained that information. So protecting them should be the top priority, but people do need transparency, and we need to see the names released.
So what he's doing here is making sure he keeps himself separated from Trudeau, because he knows Trudeau's going to keep those names hidden because there is no smoking gun in there. And Trudeau's using this with the shield of national security to back himself with that. Then nobody can fact check it. So Jagmeet's keeping himself positioned between the two parties, but keeping himself in a position where he can't be attached to Trudeau and that anger that is being directed towards him.
So you're looking for all names released?
I want to see as much transparency as possible while recognizing national security interests. I think they can be balanced, and that people ought to know who is involved. And there should be a way to do that while protecting the matters that I outlined.
How do you do that? How do you release names and then protect the people? You can't. It's one or the other, and it needs to just be released. If they've committed crimes against our country, their names need to be released. They need to be fired, ejected, put in prison, whatever, punished.
And just to clarify on the names, there were no names of NDP parliamentarians, or there were none that you were concerned about?
There was no information that I received, having read the document and received the top secret clearance. There's no information that I received regarding current or past candidates that required me to take additional steps when it came to the New Democratic Party. But there were outstanding issues, from what I read, impacting other parties. And that's why I've said all leaders should get clearance and should take the necessary steps to protect the integrity of our democracy and to ensure that there's not this interference. If I can be very specific, I have said, and I pointed out, the only federal leader in our country right now who is not either committed to or obtained security clearance is Pierre Poilievre. It is very disturbing to me, given the ongoing threats, the ongoing and real threats from a foreign government impacting the lives of Canadians right now, in addition to specific allegations that are now public knowledge in the report that was released that specifically named the Conservative Party of Canada and at least two leadership races, the one where the current leader was chosen and the previous one. Given that, I cannot imagine why a leader would not want to receive all information possible to take every step to protect our country. I love our country. I love our democracy, as these workers do. These workers love Canada. I love Canada. I want to do.
This guy is just like filling the space with random words. I love Canada. They love Canada. I love Canada. There's not only a reason Poilievre doesn't want to get security clearance. There's multiple reasons. We'll break them down this video. But one of them is if you get that clearance, this is Cpac clearance. This is a group, a division that Trudeau created, and he wrote it in a way that anyone who gets that clearance is muzzled for life talking about the specific topic. And if the information is crappy, then you're screwed. Not all information is going to be credible or good, but it muzzles a prime minister, it muzzles a member of parliament, anyone for life who gets that clearance and looks at it. Jagmeet knows this. He's working with Trudeau on this. There's no doubt about it.
I can't imagine why a political leader wouldn't also want to do that as well. So I can't understand why Pierre Poilievre refuses to get information that could protect the lives of Canadians, that could protect the sanctity of our democracy. This is a moment where we have to put our party second and put the country first. It is a country first approach. And the only reason I think Pierre Poilievre is reluctant to take the information or get the information necessary is because he wants to protect his party above the country. And that is...
This is absolutely ridiculous. I'm working on another video, but this guy is not country first. It very much seems like he's been working with Trudeau to bring in people strictly from India. It's all tied to the Khalistani movement. I'm not sure if this is 100% what is going on, but it sure seems like it. Jumping to the next clip here, we've got Tom Mulcair, who's interviewed on this. And I'll say the last time I put him on the show, he was an absolute bonehead. He was just totally off the mark on his comments on Pierre Poilievre. But in this video here, he is right on the money. I'll give him credit where credit is due.
Tom, good morning. Great to see you. So I want to begin by getting your thoughts on what we heard from the Prime Minister yesterday. And I did also want to ask you, was that planned, or were those comments about Poilievre and the accusations spontaneous?
They were anything but spontaneous, and it was a planned hit on Poilievre to distract. Over the weekend, the long weekend, we learned that there was a big tussle still going on with India over foreign interference. Well, lo and behold, on Thanksgiving Monday press conference with the RCMP and with Mr. Trudeau, when he got questions about his leadership, he said, well, we're not going to talk about petty internal politics. This is big stuff for Canadians. So he's been trying to distract from his own problems. I'm not saying, by the way, and I'm not even suggesting, that the RCMP did this to help Trudeau, nor that the accusations against India aren't serious. They are. But the timing of this is something that was clearly controllable and controlled to help Mr. Trudeau. Same thing with yesterday's announcement. What he did in that hearing is he tried to throw you used a bombshell. I'd use a more high school term of a stink bomb that he tried to throw at the leader of the official opposition. You know, Marcia, I know you're aware of this. I used to be the leader of then Her Majesty's loyal opposition, and the main job of the leader of the opposition is to hold the government to account. I agree completely with Poilievre's decision not to take the bait. Trudeau's been trying for a year and a half to restrain what Pierre Poilievre can do by trying to say, come and get this private briefing, and oh, by the way, then you'll be held to an official secret, and you won't be able to talk about this anymore. Trudeau.
Yeah, so that's exactly it. Once you get that briefing from Cpac, you're bound for life. You can't talk about it at all. And like I said before, if it's not credible information, you did it all for nothing.
Trudeau doesn't want to talk about the fact that there were known cases, and they're coming out clearly, where the Liberals sat on information, refused to issue warrants and the like with regard to Liberals. So they're trying to distract and say, oh, you know, look at this guy Poilievre. He doesn't even want to know the names of the people. And look at all the conditional wording that Trudeau uses. It's to go back to the 50s in the United States, it's McCarthyism. You know, it's the enemy within. We've got these people and they don't even want to know about it. This is simply not worthy of Canadian politics. I've never seen anything so low. And last night I was on a French panel show that I do on Wednesdays. It's a 1-hour show. And we had as our first guest for about 15 minutes, Mélanie Joly, completely over the top rhetoric, a total hit job on Pierre Poilievre. It couldn't become clearer than it did at that moment that this was all about the Liberals trying to focus and attack Pierre Poilievre to avoid having to answer, one, what they have not done on foreign interference, and two, Trudeau's leadership problems. We learned today, for example, that there are a lot of MPs who are about to come out and ask outright for Trudeau to step down. So these are all attempts to distract and get away from the issues at hand. And I think that Canadians are a lot smarter than that. They look at Poilievre and they realize this guy was doing his job, and this type of hit is unseemly, frankly.
I mean, he mentions Trudeau being the one doing the hit job, but I just showed you the clip of Jagmeet doing the exact same thing, you know, same thing, Mélanie Joly. Jagmeet has Trudeau's back right to the end, at least till February. That seems very clear at this point.
Poilievre has responded by asking the Prime Minister to release the names. Is that likely to happen?
No, of course not. Trudeau's going to try to roll this thing out for as long as he can and claim national secrets and protect people's charter rights. But what he's showing at the same time is, again, that this was a pure political knock against an adversary. He used that platform, and honestly, I'm still a lawyer, member of the Cpac bar, and I'm always a bit careful when I talk about legal institutions, the judiciary. This is a commission of inquiry. I have the greatest respect for Commissioner Hogue herself. But I did find it passing strange that Trudeau was allowed to use that platform and to go off on this complete political partisan tangent against an opponent. I remember right at the beginning, Marcia, the Conservatives had been denied the right to have an attorney there because she was afraid that would become too political. Well, in fact, the Conservative lawyer has proven himself to be highly professional, very moderate in his approach, and has been, as he was yesterday, and doing his job extraordinarily well. The only person who tried to politicize this commission of inquiry is named Justin Trudeau.
Now, what's really interesting is I didn't show a clip of this yesterday, but after a break, they came back and Commissioner Hogue sits down, Trudeau sits down, and they start speaking in English. And then they switch to French, and then the translation comes through, and Trudeau says to her, "Oh, it seems a little weird to have two francophones speaking English." And then she kind of laughed, and they had a smiley little moment. And just the rapport there, it just seemed a little too comfortable. So to hear, him talking about this now with her not calling him out, I mean, Trudeau was allowed to use that for full-on partisan attacks when he's the one being questioned. Not only that, and he's using this with a shield of national security. It's disgraceful.
So how does this, let's remember what's at the heart of this inquiry. How does the testimony yesterday when the Prime Minister was a witness reflect what we heard from him yesterday? Will it change Hogue's report in any way? I mean, what is to become of what we heard from the Prime Minister yesterday on this?
Well, we heard two very different things from the Prime Minister, because in the earlier part of his testimony, he said, well, I've got this national security advisor. I don't look at all this stuff. She triages it for me. She tells me what I should be looking at and not. I'm not going to waste my time reading all this security stuff. And then in the afternoon, he says, well, as Prime Minister, I get to see this stuff. So I looked at the document and look at all these Conservatives, and Poilievre doesn't even want to know about it. So he apparently spent a heck of a lot more time looking at what he claims is a list of people within the Conservative Party, parliamentarians or candidates, and or this or perhaps that, and maybe we have evidence and maybe we don't. It was that type of game. So he doesn't pay much attention when it's Liberals, but boy, does he pay attention when he claims it's Conservatives. That, I think, says a lot about the goal of the exercise in Trudeau's mind. It's purely political, and he's trying to get people distracted away from his own problems.
Okay, and lastly, I do want to ask you to comment a bit further on this move, this groundswell of Liberals who want to see the Prime Minister step aside. They're apparently going to be going public within the next couple of days. Tom, where do you see that heading? We heard at the end of that news conference on Monday, I believe, Thanksgiving Monday, when the Prime Minister came out with Ministers Joly and LeBlanc, that he wasn't going anywhere, that he's going to lead the party into the next election. So where do you see that movement heading?
Well, the information that I've been getting from other people at the highest level of the Liberal Party is that Trudeau's actually going to prorogue. In other words, pull that emergency brake when your political train's about to go off the tracks, suspend Parliament for a while. And the plan, at least the thinking, was to have a leadership race and then to have somebody else come in and let Trudeau leave, with his head held high in sometime in 2025.
His head held high. This guy's quite literally responsible for the ending of so many human beings in this country. That man will go down as the biggest disgrace in Canadian history, period.
If indeed he's thinking of sticking around and he's serious about that, I don't think he can say anything else, by the way. He has to say he's sticking around, otherwise he's a lame duck. But if indeed that is really his plan, then it's going to get very problematic for him. When you've got, we were told maybe a dozen, maybe 20, maybe more than that, who have signed or not signed or will be going to the microphones. Sean Casey apparently didn't sign the document, but he was, a very respected Prince Edward Island member of Parliament. And he was out there, by the way, he speaks perfect French, Sean Casey does, and he was out there in English and in French on both media saying it's time for this guy to go.
If you didn't see about 2 episodes ago, I had the video of Sean Casey where he's basically ripping Trudeau and saying he needs to step down. So the fact that he didn't sign that document and he's one of those liberals that wants Trudeau to go says a lot about what's going on. That party is crumbling from the inside. I mean, these people are going to lose their jobs. They know it. Trudeau has destroyed that party beyond repair. If he had stepped down, say, a year ago, a lot of these seats would have been saved. You know, the Toronto St. Paul's or whatever, pick an example. These people would still have their jobs. But now Conservatives are taking these over because of Trudeau's arrogance and narcissistic desire for power.
So this is the real problem that Trudeau has. It's certainly not a, Poilievre is a problem for him because he's 22 points ahead of Trudeau in the polls, but his real problem is his caucus and his party. And I have a certain empathy for that and knowing what it's like to be a party leader facing that, tough situations. But I do think that Mr. Trudeau has to look at this a little bit more lucidly than he has been doing.
Something to note too is 22-point lead is on the lower end, is upwards of 26 sometimes based on the polling numbers. Jumping back over to Jagmeet now, just listen to how he supports Trudeau and he just keeps ripping into Poilievre about this clearance.
Pierre Poilievre has to get security clearance and know what's going on that's directly impacting his party. I mean, it is ludicrous to me that someone who claims to want to be the prime minister of this country doesn't want to know of ongoing and serious threats that impact Canadians, that impact us. And I think it disqualifies him as a candidate for prime minister if he doesn't want to know about the serious threats that are impacting him and his party. I think it's clear to me that both of these leaders have at many times chosen to put the party before the country.
So he's taking a little jab there at Trudeau too. He just wants to make sure that he doesn't want to get too close or it's too obvious to disqualify Poilievre. Really, Jagmeet, this is your last-ditch effort. You can't beat him. Let's just disqualify him. This is pathetic. Jagmeet fully rips into Pierre Poilievre, yet he gives these padded little tiny jabs to Justin Trudeau. You just know in the background they're having little meetings about this, making sure to, say things where it doesn't seem like they're too close together. Jagmeet, are you ready for your debriefing? So jumping ahead, he's asked again about this.
No problem.
You talked about how when you got that classified briefing that there were outstanding issues that you said impacted other parties. Did those outstanding issues impact the Conservative Party and other parties? And what can you say about the severity of these outstanding issues from your perspective?
I thought that they were quite severe. I thought the matters were quite serious. I think it's fair just
look at this guy's facial expression. Jagmeet just said the foreign interference regarding the Conservatives is quite severe. This guy turns his head and he's like, really? That's what that looks like to me. He's like in shock, like, really? Are you kidding?
just point to what is available in the public document. It is clear that there are, in this report, which I might remind folks, it was a report that was written by a committee that included members of parliament from all parties, in addition to senators. This report indicated that there was clear intelligence that impacted the Conservative Party of Canada. That is out there in the public discourse. That alone should raise serious concerns for Canadians, saying that, well, this public report, the portion of it that's public, has serious allegations impacting the Conservative Party of Canada. And Pierre Poilievre refuses to receive a security clearance to know about what's going on. And please, let's not buy his bogus excuse that this anyway limits what you can say. It limits the protection of our methodology and of the people, which I hope that he would also want to protect, but it doesn't limit me in any way from criticizing the government, from pointing out my disagreement with their conclusions, as I did. The special rapporteur said that there was no need for a public inquiry after receiving
He's bringing this one back up. Jagmeet is doing his best here to support his buddy Trudeau.
the information. I read that information and said, no, I disagree. We absolutely need a public inquiry. So I want to be clear. Yes, there are serious allegations that impact the Conservative Party. And we already also know of the impact of the allegations as it touches the Liberal Party of Canada. And that Justin Trudeau knew about these allegations and did not take steps. And so both of them have questions to answer.
And then for the follow, you said that you want the names of parliamentarians that the Prime Minister has said engaged or were victims of foreign interference to be released publicly, which is something that the Conservative leader is also calling for. Can you just clarify, is that what you're asking for, to waive the security clearance on this and just make these names public?
I believe there must be a way for us to be able to release that information while protecting those items. Pierre Poilievre has to get security clearance and know what's going on that's directly impacting his party. I mean, it is ludicrous to me that someone who claims to want to be the prime minister of this country doesn't want to know of ongoing and serious threats that impact Canadians, that impact us.
So with all that rambling from Jagmeet, we've got this here. So posted by Bruce McGongle. It says the only reason that we don't know who the treasonous actors are in our government is because Justin Trudeau is blocking the release of the names using a lifetime gag order required to get Cpac clearance. Breaching the lifetime gag order comes with severe penalties up to 14 years in prison.
I created the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians for a very specific purpose: to make sure the parliamentarians from all different parties would be able to look into everything that our national security agencies are doing, with at least two clear goals. One is to make sure that our national security agencies are behaving appropriately and not violating Canadians' fundamental rights or overreaching or doing the bidding of one particular government versus the well interests of Canadians. But the second is to make sure that national security agencies are taking seriously all the threats and acting in appropriate ways to counter the threats.
He created that agency knowing full well that if you get clearance, then you're stuck, you're muzzled. You get to know the information, you can't do much with it. This comment here is interesting. It said, yes, I posted a 10-minute video of LeBlanc saying it took 8 months for paperwork to go from CSIS to Cpac to the PMO. That is unbelievable. He set up the committee to be able to cover up everything, period. We still don't know what happened on our own Canadian soil in that Winnipeg lab, another cover-up. I mean, that situation, that's where Justin Trudeau prorogued the government to clean that up. Next up, we got this clip here. This is Katie Telford. This is Justin Trudeau's chief of staff. It says here, explains why Pierre Poilievre is wise to not receive the security briefing on foreign interference. I'll add one note. This is a lifelong Cpac gag order. No thanks.
And those political parties need those cleared party representatives so that they can get the information, even if they can't act in the moment, because more often than not, the information we're given or a political party is given, they're told you can't do anything with this because you could burn the source or whatever else. And so, but having that information, it might actually help in terms of putting something together that you might have known about that potential candidate, for example, from other information that you might have at the party. Different political parties have different processes on how they vet candidates. So they might have had other information, and when they hear that bit of information, it kind of puts a puzzle together, and there is a way they can act that wouldn't harm anything.
Jumping back to the press conference, more with Jagmeet.
I know you've been calling for Pierre Poilievre to get the top secret clearance. In a statement yesterday, he was saying that his chief of staff does receive classified briefings, and neither he nor anyone from intelligence agencies have raised these concerns directly with him. Just what do you make of that reasoning from the Conservative leader?
I think it sounds like a cop-out. Does that sound like a leader that's taking this seriously? It doesn't sound like someone who cares. You've got these serious allegations that a foreign government literally hired gangs in Canada to go out and shoot up people's homes and people's businesses. Canadians' lives are put at risk. Does that sound like the response of a leader who's taking it seriously, who actually is concerned about safety? Saying, oh, someone else in my team has looked at it, I don't know, something. That does not sound like someone who's taking this seriously. This is serious.
Jagmeet knows exactly what he's doing here. He knows how he's helping his buddy Trudeau out. Him getting the security clearance doesn't matter. He's never going to be prime minister. Despite how many millions of people he's got Trudeau to bring in from India for him to vote for him, it's not going to work. And the final mumbo jumbo coming out of Jagmeet's mouth.
The Prime Minister also making reference to the situation in Don Valley North regarding issues involving the Liberal Party and foreign interference. In your view, being able to look at the Cpac report, was that the lone instance of potential foreign interference highlighted with the Liberals, or did you see issues that raise your concern beyond the Don Valley North situation?
I think in the public discourse, there's additional matters that were raised, and there are additional matters that need to be addressed. And frankly, the Prime Minister has known about information and not taken sufficient action, but at least he tried to know. Not taking sufficient action. And we got a Conservative leader who doesn't even want to know.
There it is. So Trudeau tried. He's okay. I should be leader, but Poilievre is bad. That's what it's so obvious.
I believe what an appropriate steps for a leader is to know exactly what's going on and take every step possible to protect our country.
With that, we're jumping back over to CTV here. They bring in a political science professor, Lydia Miljan, who talks about this and has some more insights onto the whole situation, which is quite interesting.
The leader of the Conservative Party to not get those classified briefings means that nobody in his party, not him, and nobody in a position of power knows the names of these individuals and can take appropriate action.
Lydia, we want to be clear that Pierre Poilievre does have a position on this. He has said, look, if I get that kind of clearance, it means that anything I hear will be secret and I'm not allowed to talk about it. And I don't like that. It sort of handcuffs me from being able to be transparent. What's your take on what's going on here? Because it's very convoluted and frankly quite confusing.
I like this guy. I find him and Vasti are the only ones on CTV that are fair. And even just the fact he just said that it's convoluting. It is convoluting. That's why I just dedicated this video to really trying to clear this up.
It is confusing because we hear testimony, from leaders of CISA saying there are no traitors in Parliament. So there's that argument. And then we have the Prime Minister, very much like Joe McCarthy, saying, I have a list of names, but I'm not going to show you the names. And then Poilievre saying, well, show them all. He's basically saying, a pox in all your houses. If there are people that are compromised, show them all. I don't want to be hamstrung by the secrecy that I have to sign off on if I have this briefing. So it's a bit of a stalemate, but it's also very much politics. And you're seeing the partisans go after each other quite strongly. Certainly, Mr. Trudeau wanted to use this opportunity to have a full frontal attack against Poilievre to basically shake away some of his supporters, trying to suggest that he's hiding something or he doesn't want to act appropriately. Meanwhile, Poilievre's using it as an opportunity to shoot back at the Prime Minister, saying, "Well, if there are traitors amongst us, let's hear who they all are, not just singling out the Conservatives." And we did hear a testimony yesterday that Trudeau did admit that there were some Liberals on that list as well.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. That's very important. It's not just Conservatives. There are Liberals as well. And you also rightly point out that the Liberals and the NDP are taking this as an opportunity politically to try and attack Pierre Poilievre. And we've seen a lot of this, Lydia, in recent months. They know the Conservatives are doing very well in the polls. They're angry about that. They can't seem to understand why. And so every opportunity they get, they go after Poilievre.
Yeah, so I think what they're trying to do is frame this as a character issue, frame this as, is this person the right person to lead? Can he, and they want to basically chip away at that. They want to say, he's not ready to be Prime Minister because he's unwilling to make the hard decisions, or he's unwilling to make sure that all of his candidates are perfectly able and willing to stand for office. Again,
that's a good point right there. That's the attack that Trudeau's doing right now with Jagmeet, the two of them together. They're trying to attack Poilievre's character and say he's unfit to make these decisions because he's not willing to get this national Cpac security clearance. That is their current move. They're trying to deflect, well, at least from Trudeau and his party going to jail for the SDTC scandal, and they're just attacking his character.
Again, it falls a little bit short when we know that there are parliamentarians suspected, and again, there's no real evidence. So it's not like you get the list and then you can say, that's it, I'm going to oust them from caucus, because that would be a public way of showing it. So, as the Prime Minister mentioned yesterday, there are tools that a leader can use, basically.
Yeah, so if Poilievre gets this information, then just ousts John Doe from the Conservative Party, then that's publicly admitting, showing that he knew that knowledge and revealing it to the world. Because people are like, well, why did you just oust this guy? Yesterday, Trudeau was talking about, well, there's different ways you can do this, whether it's, not letting them run again or whatever it is. There's more discreet ways of getting rid of members. Poilievre doesn't want to be first muzzled for life. And if he breaks that, potentially 14 years in jail. Doesn't want to be tied in how he handles his party. If someone is doing something bad, he just wants to kick the person out. And if that's tied to national security clearance, then he can't do that.
Not signing the nomination papers or not letting them be part of a shadow cabinet. But apart from that, he didn't say that they could kick him out of the caucus or do anything else, given the fact that there isn't, that they have to have due process. So I think that this is where it's not going to work out that well for Mr. Trudeau or Mr. Singh making these attacks on Poilievre, because Poilievre's response has simply been, let's shine a light on all of it. And those leaders aren't willing to go that far.
And the reason why Poilievre wants to do that, because he knows it's bullcrap what Trudeau is saying there. There might be some people out in the weeds, nominees or whatever, but I mean, Elizabeth May came out and said there was no one in the House of Commons that's a traitor. I mean, I think that's what she said when she said that. There's no need to worry about specifically in the House there. But Justin Trudeau made it seem very much like the Conservative Party's compromised. That's his angle on this now. It's pathetic, and he's hiding behind that national security clearance. Poilievre is challenging him now. He put out a letter and said, you know, show the names, release the names, because he knows Justin Trudeau has gotten nothing.